The more memories and experiences we can collect, the richer our lives get. I don't think I can say anything that gets someone over the hump to do of international relocation. It's not for the faint at heart. But if I did have to give one small piece of guidance, do it immediately. Don't wait.
Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. We are gathered today, dear friends. I forget how Prince's song kicks off. Do you guys know that song?
I do.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. I mean, that's what everybody should listen to in the morning is, when you wake up, let's go crazy or something like that. Is that the song, Tony?
I'm trying to think through it, and Phish was in Indiana about a month and a half ago, and they played a Prince song, and it's Cream. They played Cream, so it's not the same song.
Did you go to the Phish concert?
I did. That concert was my 30th anniversary of seeing Phish with same group of friends.
Man, whoever's listening and whoever has ever listened to Phish is completely judging you right now. They're like, "Oh, I got this guy figured out. We don't need to listen to him anymore."
I'm not. Don't.
So we got my good friend Tony O'Neill with us today, and Tony and I crossed paths a while ago, thanks to our kids. But I wanted Tony to come on today to help just light a fire for somebody who needs a spark to think differently. That's one of Keith's mottos, Tony, think differently about their life. And so Tony, you're waking up in Costa Rica this morning, and I'm curious, what would you tell somebody, what is it like to wake up in Costa Rica versus waking up in Indianapolis?
Yeah. So Doug, Keith, good to see you both this morning, and appreciate the invite to come on. And so waking up in Costa Rica is a little bit different. The main difference would be, one is the sun and the light. It's light outside a lot earlier. So I was up today about 4:30, and by 5 a.m., you can see where you're walking through the jungle. I'd say the second thing, and this is something I really, really love about living here, is our bedrooms obviously our whole house can be air conditioned, but it's all individually controlled. So you leave the master bedroom and you walk out into the part of the main part of the home, and it's warm every morning.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. So light and warmth. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Darkness and cold. Like, we could apply that to every area of life.
Warm.
Spiritually, physically, light and warmth. So, Tony, like, if we were to go back in the time machine with you, you were living in Indianapolis. Were you born in Indianapolis?
I was born on the south side of Chicago.
Okay. And so give us, what in the world is that? All right. For those of you who are driving.
I'm still stuck in Leroy Brown, is what I'm thinking, on the south side of Chicago. But
that just really threw me off big time. Okay, so that's also what it's like living in Costa Rica. So for those of you who are not watching this, Tony, describe what you just lifted up. I mean, I've got a can of I'm pretending. I've got a can of lemon lime Waterloo here. What the heck is that?
This is a pipa frío. So this is a young coconut. And this morning when I came back out of the ocean and I got into the Land Cruiser to come back home, I stopped by my friend Gato, who sells these on the side of the road out of like an old freezer. And he's been doing this for 20 years, and I pegged him that he must be a millionaire by now with how many of these he's sold over 20 years.
What's one of those set me back in dollars?
In dollars, about $2.
I thought that was pretend. Like, I thought you got that at like off what's that, Temu or whatever. That's a real thing. What's it called again?
It's called a pipa frio. So what that is, it's a young cold coconut.
Oh my gosh, how great. So if we go back in the time machine, south side of Chicago, you migrate to Indianapolis somehow. You're not drinking
Pipa
frios. What was life like?
Yeah. So my family moved from Chicago to Indianapolis when I was 10. So I've spent the most of my life living in Indianapolis. So I guess to answer your question, actually, Doug, I forgot your question. Ask me that question again.
Well, yeah, what was life like for you, like before Costa Rica? Like, yeah, what describe that?
So the story, obviously starts well before Costa Rica, and I was living in San Francisco, and I was helping build my, I guess would be my third financed startup. And when that chapter ended, I moved back to Indianapolis, and I had an opportunity, out there and through a few other organizations I was part of to work with some really incredibly smart people, really good leaders. But what I realized was I wanted more control over the direction of my business and ultimately my life. And then I started to reverse engineer really the life that I wanted.
And so where did this idea that Costa Rica might be a part of it come into play?
Yeah, so there are a few things that mattered to me when I was and again, I have to start a little bit before Costa Rica. And the things that mattered to me was I needed to earn enough to support the lifestyle that I wanted. I wanted a choice in whatever business I got involved with to scale a company with employees or operate as a solopreneur. And another thing that was really important to me, and this is probably a big piece of it, was I wanted the business to be location independent and within a reasonable time zone of wherever I was doing the business. And the other thing was I really wanted control over my calendar so I could prioritize health, training, things I love doing. And I've always been an athlete. So in Indianapolis, like being able to ride midday, swim, lift when I wanted to, train at times where my body felt that it was in the best time for me to be active, and that ultimately, became my business, which is Highline Outdoor Group. And Highline is an executive search firm. My core area of expertise is the outdoor industry and the sporting goods industry. And so if we speed up now, and by 2017 or 2018, we had a really good life in Indianapolis. We lived in Meridian-Kessler. At that point, I had met my wife, now Marla, and her two boys. I'd fallen in love with the three of them. And my office was about 5 minutes away in Broad Ripple. And I normally, work in the morning, somewhere around midday. I'd ride or swim with my swim group, or I'd go to the gym, train, then return back to the office. And so at that time, in all honesty, we weren't trying to escape Indianapolis. We genuinely liked our life. And, what I'd unknowingly done was, I built a business that allowed us to start, I guess, sort of asking a bigger question. And where do we actually want to live? And so I guess that's where something, had been sitting in the background for, I call it 25 years of, I've been a wannabe surfer. I'd lived in the Bay Area earlier in my life with my family. I'd caught my first wave. And so I guess I think Indianapolis has many, many wonderful qualities, but surf breaks are not one of them.
And I can remember you would paddle a longboard on the White River, right?
I would before surf trips. And it's, anyone like myself that lived landlocked where you're trying to, get ready for a surf trip. You're never and I now know this because I've been able to surf, 200, 250 days a year. There's nothing that replaces surfing. So you can, no matter how many push-ups, pull-ups, weights, paddling up the nasty white river on a on a surfboard, nothing prepares you for getting into the ocean.
And I think if my memory's right, you would watch surf reports in Lake Michigan, and it didn't matter the season, you would go up.
That's a good memory, Doug. So it was Lake Michigan. Most people don't realize legitimately has waves. Now, those waves only come in from storms, and they typically only arrive in the fall and the winter. And so, yes, I would ping the surf reports. I would drive from Indianapolis up to St. Joseph, Michigan. I'd put on the thickest wetsuit you've ever seen. By the time I got the wetsuit on, I was already spent. And then you'd get into 40-degree water with waves crashing on your head, which is like a nonstop ice headache. And then you'd hope to somehow be able to get your body to move in a giant piece of foam and rubber and slide into a wave or two, and then make the 3.5-hour drive home.
And with that, you were probably surfing a longboard, weren't you?
Definitely. Up there, the waves are, they're obviously not going to be waves of consequence. They're not going to be overhead waves. Not that and there can be on the Great Lakes, but these were knee-high waves, so a longboard was the optimal size surfboard.
You're driving up there hours, driving back hours just to go straight on a longboard.
Pretty much just to go straight on a longboard.
That's incredible. So and Keith, jump in anytime. I could talk to Tony all day. So when you guys made the decision, hey, we're going to do something, was Costa Rica the only one on the radar? Or were you looking at South Africa? Did you go watch Endless Summer too, on repeat? Or how did you decide Costa Rica?
Yeah, that's a good question. So everything was on the table, and I had spent before meeting Marla 4 winters living in different parts of Asia and Southeast Asia, and Marla also was well traveled throughout Asia, and both of us we loved Bali. I didn't think I could actually live in Bali, but we kind of looked at the map, and all these we had all. Sometimes when you have a lot of options, it's more difficult. But I think we didn't just look at a map, say Costa Rica was it, right? I think the story starts a little bit before that also. And we had both, we loved warm weather. And the cold weather was hard on both of us, hard on our bodies. And, both of us had independently gone through different Tony Robbins programs. And really one idea or one quote that he said had stuck with me, and something that we talked about quite a bit. And the quote goes something like this. I don't think I can say it verbatim, but he said, "The road to someday leads to a town called never." And we kept thinking, as two people that loved being in warm climates, we kept thinking someday, oh, we'll move to Scottsdale, or someday we'll move to Florida, or someday I'll surf regularly, right? And so we started asking, why does all this have to be someday? And so we weren't ever really talking about, I guess not abandoning Indianapolis, or, but we needed to find a place that we both enjoyed, and I guess that is kind of leads to how Costa Rica even came on the map for us. And that was, I had been to this town that we live in now. So now it would have been 26 years ago. And as things progressed in our life, I guess this would have been 2018, I came up with this idea. I go, why don't I go down to Nosara and check it out? Because I told her about it. And why don't I try to rent us a condo for the winter, or a house? And she was on board.
So some guys and I are going through a Proverbs a day. And the other day, this is the proverb that came up that reminds me of the quote that you just gave from Tony. Is it Tony Robbins?
Yeah.
And this one, unfortunately, Caroline's familiar with. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire fulfilled is a tree of life. How sweet is that?
That's beautiful.
Tony, when I was thinking about you, in on the back of my card, I have like 5 principles that I think are key for financial advice. One's think differently. Second is buy wisdom. Third is like what you do. Fourth is live adventurously. And then the 5th thing is generosity wins. And I just see that all embodied in you. And I'm just curious because somebody that is able to do all that just seems very rare in my experience on planet Earth. And so when I was thinking about our time together, I guess a question I have, did you ever play baseball?
Maybe 2 years when I was young. Baseball, I mostly played hockey.
Okay. So one of the principles of baseball was that you run through first and to all the other bases, including home plate.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed about you was a through first base kind of thing that I don't know anybody else that did it. And so that's what I wanted to ask you was, you have a silver palm.
What does that mean?
Is that right?
I do.
No, yeah. And I don't know. I was researching it a little bit. I found a guy named Roland Salatino that has 17 palms, which is unbelievable. But a single palm, I think it's a bronze palm, is running past first base. Like the Eagle Scout requires a certain thing, and I don't know very many Eagle Scouts that ever got a palm, and so you got 2 of them. So what motivated you to go past the Eagle Scout, I guess is my question.
Well, that is a good question. So motivation, I mean, part of it also is more than motivation, right? My parents put a lot into my scouting, and I don't think I would have pursued or be able to finish my Eagle Scout had I not had 2 very supportive parents. And what the palm represents is, like you said, going past first base. It's accumulation of merit badges that exceed the already very large amount of merit badges required to reach the level of Eagle Scout. And to answer your question bluntly, I think it was my curiosity. It was wanting to learn more, because each merit badge was another skill that you would learn, that you would then be gauged on, not judged, but you'd have to pass an exam, pass tests, and be able to prove that you're competent in a specific discipline or skill, typically involved with the outdoors.
Well, it was funny as I was kind of checking out your history and things, and I was doing some writing last week, and I don't really live with regrets, but I think like the closest thing to it when I was raising my son, I probably would have pushed him harder into Boy Scouts had I thought more about it, because I did get my Eagle Scout, and there was a lot I learned from that I just have been reflecting on lately. But what I was curious was it has a reputation of being for nerds, and for a lot of reasons. But when I reflect on it, it's one of the coolest things I ever did. Like the stuff I was constantly doing I wasn't surfing in Costa Rica, but I was spelunking, I was rappelling, I was doing everything that everybody wants to do. And so like the Boy Scouts, it seems like they've just tripped over themselves in their marketing of this.
You know, it is. I'm very grateful for it too, Keith. When I look back, I mean, besides the skills, right, we learned perseverance, right? We learned how to keep pushing when everything's kind of telling you to stop.
Yeah, one of the other things I was reflecting on when I was thinking about it, when I went through it, was many years before you, but there was a time limitation to advance from one rank to the next back then. And when I was researching it, that's not necessarily the case, except for the last from life to eagle. And then I think each of the palms had a 3-month limitation on them. But when I was thinking about the time limitation, it meant you had to learn some patience if you're an aggressive personality. You couldn't get the next rank without waiting for that time frame to end. So there's just a lot of ideas that were really critical for me over the years.
Definitely know that I took mine to the wire right before I turned 18. And that was, as you start driving, right? You get, girls, all the things that happen in life. And you're like, Boy Scouts? And I just said, my parents never pushed me though. Like they were just very supportive. They never really pushed me into anything, which is amazing. Like I never felt force from them, but I talked to so many friends and people that I know that parents, they did push and pressure. And there was none of that in my household.
That's really cool. Well, I just wanted to touch on that. I just thought that was a cool.
I learned
cool
something
part of
today. I didn't know what the palms were. I've never heard of that.
They represent, palms historically represent a certain amount of loyalty or just a privileged place. And I think I had enough merit badges for a palm. I had no motivation to do it. Probably all I had to do was fill out a piece of paper to get it, but I just couldn't get, like you said, I'm driving, I'm chasing all these things, and I just have the motivation to get the palm. Yeah, and I don't think it required anything. So.
And now you have palm trees. I'm assuming you have palm trees.
Oh, do I have some palm trees?
Did people think you were crazy when you did this?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if crazy is the right word. People were very surprised. I think it was difficult for a lot of people to understand at first. And it probably was a little bit difficult for us to understand, right? When we had rented the condo, Marla had never even been here. So I came down here, it was difficult to find a place here. It was very, very expensive to find a place. And, once I had the condo secured, it was about 6 months before we moved down here. And we didn't move. We just were going to spend the winter here. And in that 6 months is when it got really interesting because that's when we started thinking about it more and more. And we even had this is where, I think this is really interesting, Doug, with our, some conversations that we had was, and I actually can remember this. I think it was June of 2018. And I had gone to the Outer Banks on a surf trip. And I took my dog. His name was Chief.
Yeah.
And I decided he'd had this crazy surgery. He wasn't supposed to survive. He came back. I said, this dog makes it. He's never seen a beach. I'm going to take him there. So we go to the Outer Banks. And I had rented a place on the Outer Banks. And you and I spoke one of the nights I was there, Doug. And at that time, I had some, you and I were already, we'd been friends. Then we had our professional relationship. And I'd come off a couple good years of work. I had finished building out the entire executive team for Yeti coolers during their biggest growth period. While we were taking Yeti into growing them into do an IPO. And I had some capital I wanted to deploy. And you and I set up a call and we talked about it. And, this is really interesting because my business and you know that I make a pretty good living. But there's swings in what you earn in executive search, right? You may have the front of the year, you make all your money in the first 3 months. It's that kind of swing in how this business generates revenue. And my question to you is where we should deploy the capital. And you actually gave me some advice. Not actually, the exact advice you gave me was instead of deploying it into equities or other types of investments, you recommended that I pay off the house of Meridian-Kessler. And I did it. And I didn't think anything of it other than the guidance that you gave me, you said, Tony, this is going to smooth things out where you don't have, you won't have the burden of having to make these payments or reach these payments. And I took your advice. And so I paid off a pretty sizable home. And that freed me up, I guess sort of mentally freed me up of, trying to earn a certain amount each month or whatever it took to keep that house up and running. And so paying off the house meant one less big monthly payment. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about Costa Rica. So that was before we rented the condo down there. And so now the condo's rented. We've got a few months before we go down there. And that's when we just started, sort of dreaming this idea, like, what if we really like it? What if we wanted to buy a small place or buy a piece of land? And, it wasn't until, I guess, when Marla came down to visit me. So I came down 2 weeks before her. So this would have been February of 2019. And when I said, would you like to go with a broker when you get here? We'll go look at some real estate. And she said, yeah. I go, when do you want to do it? She goes, how about day one? So when you get to this town that we live in, at first, day one, you're like, what the heck what is this place? It's dusty. There's no paved roads. Everything looks like the jungle. Everything's getting eaten by the jungle. And it doesn't make sense. Like, it's an uncomfortable place when you first come for your first time. To drive in here, 2.5, 3 hours from the airport, some of the worst roads you've ever seen on the planet actually exist in this country. And so I prepped her. I said, look, it's going to be quite extreme when you get here. And then by day 2, it still doesn't make sense. But day 3, it kind of dawns on you a little bit. You're like, okay, I know where the coffee shop is. Okay, I understand where this jungle path goes. And then by day 4, you're like, oh my goodness. Like, you can't even make sense how beautiful this place is. And so day 1, we go out with a broker. And this is what kind of adventurous spirit Marla is. And after we visited, I think we visited maybe between eight houses and pieces of land. And I go, what do you think? She goes, I'm in.
Yeah. That was a big moment for you.
It was a big moment. And during the time leading up to her coming down, we started kind of plotting and scheming, being like, well, what if we need capital to buy a piece of land or a home? Well, the guidance you gave me 6 months prior to pay off the house in Meridian-Kessler gave me the opportunity to get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So we already had this in our mind that if we fell in love with the place, we wanted to, build a surf shack. This would then open up capital, do something that we probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Tony, a friend of ours said many months ago, I think pushing us as a team, what are you afraid of? And when I think of, like, the road to someday leads through the town of never, like, our friends that are watching or who will watch, they may be in their 80s, they may be in their 20s. How would you encourage them to not be afraid of whatever is out there in front of them? They may not be going to Costa Rica, but when you're 80, maybe just going to the grocery may be scary, or when you're 20, leaving Indianapolis and moving to Chicago might be scary. So how would you encourage them to take that first step?
I think that, and this is something I've got to tell myself quite frequently, that our lives, the more memories and experiences we can collect, the richer our lives get. So I don't think I can say anything that gets someone over the hump to do of international relocation. It's not for the faint at heart. But if I did have to give one small piece of guidance, do it immediately. Don't wait. Because then
I like that. That's really good.
You're in the someday loop.
Yeah, that's really good. I went to a breakfast this week. A friend of mine spoke about how he and a couple guys are trying to rebrand the city of Indianapolis to Speed City, and they're embracing the culture of boldness and taking action. And they referenced how the city of Indianapolis built the Hoosier Dome before they had a professional sports team. They did it. Or during the COVID time period, city of Indianapolis hosted the Bubble NCAA tournament, and no other city in the country could do it, but they did it, and they did it with speed. And so I think that's really great advice. Do it immediately. I think one last thing, Tony, that I think about with you is you were able to sell a bunch of treasures and get rid of a bunch of stuff. Didn't you move a shipping container to Costa Rica or something like that? Like, you pretty much sold everything you had, right?
Pretty much. That was an interesting period of time, because after we had acquired the piece of land down here, we immediately, this is when we had the condo, we immediately started speaking to builders and architects, and we chose an architect, and we started going through the whole plan design phase of the piece of land that we were going to try to purchase. And during that period, we knew that we were going to need to sell the Meridian-Kessler house and most of our belongings, not all of them. And so Marla she went back to Indianapolis a couple of weeks before me, as I finished doing the deal with the architect. And then when I got back to Indianapolis, and I had some counsel from a mentor of mine, a good friend of mine, of how to sell the house from Meridian-Kessler, because my goal is to sell it by owner and to not pay the 3% on a house that had quite a bit of value in it. And so we set up, I put forth a strategy of building first, making a really nice sign for the front of our house. A lot of traffic goes by this house on Central Avenue. And any of the brokers that bring people that are interested, I was going to have one showing and one showing only. I was going to do a Saturday morning between 8 to 12. I didn't want a disruption of our life to have people, hey, can we come see your house? Hey, can we come see your house? So I did a 6-hour period on a Saturday, 2 weeks after I got back. So made the sign, found a group that would put our listing on the MyBore system. And every broker that called, I said, I would vet them and say, all right, I'm going to invite you on this Saturday. I'm not going to accept any offers till the following Monday. And so I set up this strategy and I put it into play. And by Monday, we had the right offer in our hands. And so started that part of the transaction, and then became the bigger part, and that was how to liquidate a large home full of life's at least a 40-year-old's life's worth of belongings, which 3 vehicles, 12 bicycles, furniture, and so everything we own kind of fell into 3 categories: keep it, sell it, or give it away, or store it and eventually ship it in a container to Costa Rica. And there's something pretty, clarifying about deciding whether an object deserves space in a shipping container and headed to another country. And that was, it was, to be honest, it was like 10,000 decisions. It was extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And to sell that much stuff, I'm the salesman of Facebook Marketplace, people driving by, putting a BMW with their first sale sign, a Subaru with the first sale. Like, it was all these things that were happening. And I look back at it, I had no idea how we did it, to be honest. It really was a very, very crazy time of life, trying to eliminate most of our collection of life's goods.
Keep it, sell it,
Give it away,
or put it in a shipping container.
Put it in storage. Figure out how much storage you need to fill up an entire tall 40-foot shipping container. And I think we made some really good decisions. Like, I can't look back and say this, I really wish we did this or that. But we did. We shipped a container down here. We shipped a Land Cruiser down here that was fully modified and ready for these roads. And everything arrived. It was like a miracle.
Yeah.
I think you might have just answered the question for our 80-year-olds that need to be adventuresome. Is that's probably what our friends need to do, is decide whether to keep it, sell it, or give it away, just to express love to their family. Because the question is, does this object deserve space? And your objects that you accumulate over 80 years of life, a lot of them don't deserve space anymore. And the space you give up for those things will be an expression of love to your loved ones, I think. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, Tony, if you wanted to find out a little bit more about you, I know you have a podcast, and Tony recently got to interview a former executive with Quicksilver, Keith, and I just loved that episode. How would people learn more about you, Tony?
Yeah. So I think from a social channel perspective, because of the business I'm in, you're going to find what I'm up to pretty much on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way. And obviously, I have a website, I have a blog that stays current. I list the podcasts on it, but most of that exists on LinkedIn as well. And I'm pretty easy to find. That's part of the nature of my business and my brand.
And if you go to Tony's website, that is him surfing, by the way.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
That's not some stock photo.
That's awesome.
I've gotten a little bit better since then.
Tony, it is an absolute blessing to be your friend. And thank you for joining us today.
You guys too. And Doug, you've been, you don't make a lot of friends as you grow older in life, but your friendship and counsel has been invaluable to Marla and I. And Keith, you're a big part of this also, because I know how close you and Doug are, and I'm grateful to call you both my friend and also have your counsel when needed.
Very cool. Thanks for hanging out, Tony.
See you, Tony.
All right, Pura Vida.